Hey, everybody. J.J. Cooper, Taylor Blake Ward here. Another Baseball America Deep Dive podcast. The final Deep Dive podcast. 30 teams in 30-ish days, 30 days of weekdays. We haven't posted them on the weekends, but 30 weekdays in a row, one after another. And here we go. And Taylor, we're saving some of the best for last because I'm excited to talk to you today. And I'm excited to talk about a system that I would say has a pair of prospects that was a very interesting debate at number one, because we have Caden Dana and we have Christian Moore. And Caden Dana rocketed through the minors, which is going to be a theme that we might talk about here, because this is the Angels. So rocketed through the minors is if we were doing a drinking game, that would be something that you would probably be like, no, don't use that. But he's moved really fast. He made it to the majors last year. Christian Moore is moving really fast, the first rounder from last year. So to kind of just jump in, what was it about Caden Dana that at the end of the day kind of gave him that, okay, he's the edge. He's our number one prospect.
And I do have to start, JJ. I've been asked by a few people. I said, "Where's the Angels deep dive going to be?" And I said, "I don't know, because like you said, we're the last one. So excited to do this." The gap between number one, number two was not substantial by any means. Caden Dana, Christian Moore, I think value wise, future value wise outcome, you can expect something pretty similar. For me personally, and the reason I went this direction is the safety net. I played it a little conservative. I think everyone at the top of the Angels organization has some form of a high-end question as to how they're going to get to their upside, how they're going to get to their value. Caden Dana didn't have that. And it's surprising for a 20-year-old to make his major league debut at 20 years old. You figure he's a high upside player. Realistically, I don't think Caden Dana he's got plenty of upside, but it's not one of these perennial all-stars, perennial front of the rotation guys. It is such a solid tool set, such a solid player pitcher, a true number three, a true number four in your rotation. And I felt like there was it may have been conservative on my end putting him number one, but I had so much confidence in saying that the variance is what really changed everything between Christian Moore and Caden Dana. Not to say that Christian Moore couldn't be better. There's definitely the upside there that Christian Moore could be really good. But I think what we saw out of Caden Dana last year, what we've seen in his early development, just proves that this is a solid pitcher that is really supposed to, as long as he stays healthy, which there's no markers indicating that he shouldn't be healthy, that this is a very good pitcher that's going to be important to your rotation, the Angels rotation, for the next half decade or longer.
Follow-up question with that is, like you said, he reached the majors last year. I think it's good news for the Angels that it's not guaranteed that he's going to start this season in the rotation, right? Like there are enough veterans here after they added a Kyle Hendricks, for example, where depending on how this shakes out, he could get a little bit more time in the minors. Or you follow this very closely, and you think it's like, no, he's on that opening day roster in that rotation.
I'm curious to see what happens with the decisions on both Christian Moore and Caden Dana. With the rookie incentive and the draft incentive of getting a draft pick with top 100 prospect, and obviously Caden Dana and Christian both were top 100 prospects for Baseball America and other outlets that dictate that. I don't know if I'd be surprised if either or both were on the opening day roster, but I would lean more that the Angels do have the pitching to not force the issue of having Caden in the rotation or the bullpen to start the year, and can let him sizzle a little bit more. I don't know if there's anything he can prove at the AA level anymore. I mean, we saw it last year. It's a sub 2.5 ERA, quality start after quality start after quality start. I'm curious if they would challenge him in Salt Lake as a 21-year-old, because they're known for not sending pitching prospects to the PCL, which some teams don't. You look at the Mariners. The Mariners have skipped the Pacific Coast League with every single pitcher in their rotation. Something that Matt, Eddie, and I have talked about continuously that we're working on a story on. But I think I'd be surprised. That's the other thing is where are you going to put Caden
Right.
Dana to let him sit? You can't let him sizzle. He's got to learn something.
He has to go to AAA or the majors, you'd think at this point. There's no
He really
possibility
does.
of like, we're sending you back. You made the majors last year from Rocket City. You dominated the league. Congratulations. Here you go. You know where all the best places to eat are. You know, like we gave you your old locker back in the clubhouse. Like, no, you're the fact that they don't like to send pitchers to AAA does kind of put him in a little bit of conundrum because that's the logical thing. Is it's like, don't worry, he's 21 going to AAA. That's really logical. A little bit more polish. But I
Yeah,
struggle to come up with the last Angels pitching prospect who I could point to and say, oh, he spent a good bit of time in Salt Lake.
it's been a long time. And they've done it with guys like Chase Silseth and Reed Detmers, but they've done it after they made the jump to the majors. And actually, technically, after they've had 50 plus innings in the majors. So they weren't really prospects at the time. They were pitching for Salt Lake. So it's interesting to see what they're going to do with Caden. I think like you said, you kind of either have to give him the spot in the rotation or maybe you swing man him. You don't really want to do that with your 21-year-old top prospect, is have him as a swing arm, but you've got to keep him at the upper levels and you can't let him go and repeat in AA to hopefully, I mean, you just need him to keep progressing forward. And I think a step back to AA, no matter what he does, it's almost an immediate regression.
And also it is kind of one of those things where it's like it really would be just the stamp of we will never send a pitching prospect to AAA because to PCL because you really would struggle to come up. But there's no argument for like that. That is a logical progression for him to go AA all year, be one of the best pitchers in the league, go to the majors, and then be sent back there for the next year. You mentioned like he's pretty polished. I would say, Jeff Ponce and I did a prospect profile. The big thing I would say that there still is work to do is like just kind of syncing up the release points on all his different pitches, these things where he's really young, he's really durable. The other credit I will say is like, as you said, they're pitchers. You're not going to say ever like, oh, there's no way that he could possibly hurt. But Caden Dana has already shown strong indicators, like the fact that he's been able to do it gives him a leg up over other guys where you just say, no, we don't know because he's never been asked to. He's been asked to take on a reasonably significant workload and he held up. What are you kind of looking to see this year? Like, what are things that logically could be like next steps for him, whether that's pitching in the majors or, as we said, maybe in the swingman, maybe in Salt Lake, although we will find that a little bit unlikely.
Yeah, you mentioned it, the release point, and that was kind of the biggest marker with Caden last year. He didn't have a whole lot of negative markers. The slider progressed; it became a plus pitch. Some people have it as a plus pitch. His curveball improved, his changeup improved. They're both at least average at this point. I guess it's getting that third pitch to be above average, or maybe a plus. Maybe he improves the changeup. Maybe he improves the curve. Maybe he improves both. I think fastball command is, I don't even want to say a half grade off to being, better kind of thing, but it's like these little nitpicky things that he actually does have to do, and you do have to nitpick if you want him to hit his true outcome of being a mid-rotation pitcher. And whether that is small fastball command. I apologize. My cat is scratching up the post right next to me, if you can hear that. But small fastball command fixes, small release point, a more consistent release point, and just improving that third pitch. But outside of that, then you're starting to look and say, because physically he is, he gets compared to Noah Syndergaard on occasion for a multitude of reasons. But realistically, if you've seen him physically, people call him Achilles because he is a physical beast. He's incredible. Mm-hmm. And you can't add weight or muscle to this kid right now, even though he's 20 years old. So it's impressive. So just very small things that you have to tweak.
It's 3 starts. The other thing I would say is like, as we talk about him now, the 3 starts in the majors last year, and I will never say, oh, that's a big problem for a 20-year-old in the majors making starts, but they were bad. Like, he gave up a lot of homers, gave up a lot of walks, It was a 9.58 ERA. It was well over a hit an inning. The thing I would say with that is it's not unreasonable. Again, if we didn't have this, the Angels don't want to send a guy to AAA. The logical thing for him with adding a couple of veterans where you're like, okay, this is the team that isn't sitting there staring at it. You'd much rather kind of see whether, to me, it makes more sense to see if Reed Detmers has figured things out than it does to say, Caden Dana has to be in that opening day rotation. It makes more sense to say, again, injuries could change this, but there was enough here to say, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world for this. And I know that, like you said, there are other teams who do that with PCL. I also think the D-backs have kind of let some of their guys go to Reno, which is the worst of the worst in many ways. If you can pitch in Reno, it's one place where the majors might be a little bit easier in some ways than pitching even in AAA because you're no longer in Reno. But like Brandon Pfaadt was asked to kind of survive that over and over and over, and he did. But it'll be interesting to see that. But kind of following on that, you kind of hinted at it with Christian Moore. There's not as much standing in his way. I feel like if you look at this current Angels lineup, it almost feels like that there could be a scenario where it's almost like whether Christian Moore is 100% ready or not, there just may not be anyone standing in his way in some ways. But how do you kind of see it?
In all honesty, I talked to Christian about a month ago, and we have the article up at Baseball America. You can check it out. But Christian believes he's going to be there. And it's a self-confidence thing, which is outstanding. You want to see that from a young man. You want to see him want that, have the desire and say, it's not a lack of humility, but yeah, take away the humility. You have the desire to do it. Up until they signed Yoan Moncada, I genuinely thought they were going to hand him the reins at third base. And I didn't think that he could handle third base. I actually don't even know if he can handle second base, in all honesty. I think they should move him out to left field. That's me. But no, I think from the get-go, he had a meniscus injury. They didn't specify the full details of what the meniscus injury was. That was the week he was eligible to be called up and still remain rookie eligible for this season. I'm a firm believer that if he did not have that injury, he would have been playing second base for the Angels. I think it was August 19th. I think that was the date, was August 19th, August 20th, something like that. That's the day I believe he was going to be playing for the Angels. Right now, my mindset says opening day, your starter at second base is going to be Christian Moore. And something is going to have to go awry for that not to happen. And maybe Tim Anderson outplays him, and the Angels are looking to contend this year, which they do believe they have at least a chance at contending. I don't know what that means, if that means breaking 500 or if that means 75 wins or if that means playoffs. I don't know. But
that's the story of the Angels
Christian
every
Moore,
year.
Yeah.
In March every year, the Angels kind of are trying to do it this year.
And you have to give them – they're handcuffed. We all know it. We all know that they're handcuffed by ownership to some degree, and you have to give Perry Manassian praise for what he's attempting to do every year, and you have to give Artie Moreno praise for at least saying that he wants to have a winning product on the team and spending the money to do it. They just haven't done it, and a lot of it does fall on ownership, and some of it does fall in the front office as well. But I think that realistically, if they want to quote unquote contend this year, and if that means 500, if that means wild card, if that means playoffs, I'd want to see more out of Christian Moore before I just throw the reins to him on opening day. And there's hit tool questions. It's just hit tool questions. It's as simple as that. And also defensively, where is he going to play? Because he has to prove that he can play on the dirt if that's what his future is going to be. Obviously, he did it at Tennessee, and he hit well. He had hit well for average at Tennessee as well. But this is Major League Baseball. It's a different dog. And respect to him. I think he's getting close to being ready. But I personally would like to see him sit in Rocket City for at least a month just to prove some things, unless you also believe that he could be a Rookie of the Year candidate. And those are the two big markers for me when it comes to Christian.
The thing I would just say with that is that is a little baffling on this, is that Christian Moore's scouting report when he was drafted is big power, some hit tool questions, and is he going to be able to stay in the dirt? Now, just felt like a week ago that you're talking about. Like there was a week ago where it was like, okay, Christian Moore's going to play both second and third in spring training. Now, I'm with you. Like second base in the big leagues is probably going to be really challenging for him. Following, I think, basically 21 games of second base in the minors and a few games. I think he has 8 games now in spring training as we record this. I will say the idea of Christian Moore battling for the third base job, and again, as you noted, they've signed Moncada, is one of the crazier things I've ever heard of because he didn't play it last year at all. To ask a guy who the real question is, can he play his main position defensively? To say, we think we can get him. This is not a shortstop where you're like, look, he's a plus defender at short, but we've got a shortstop. We're going to try him at third and see how it works. He needs the time at second just to refine and improve there. And again, we should know, as we record this, he has not played a game at third yet. I don't know if that's because they've kind of decided discretion is the better part of valor there, or if it's because Renjifo's, but they really haven't had kind of a lot of options. Like they've kind of really needed Christian Moore to play a lot of second base. And that kind of, it does seem like as you move the puzzle pieces around, second base could be more open because as you said, like if you're working in this, he's kind of battling with Tim Anderson, who's a non-roster invitee in some ways, right? Because they do have some flexibility of moving guys around where if they decide Moore is the guy, that's probably because Tim Anderson's not going to be the shortstop.
Absolutely. And the injury to Zach Neto throws a wrench in this. It really does. Because I think Kevin Newman is the guy that I think Luis Rengifo, you mentioned it. He's not the best defender, but he's at least he can play defense at every position. He's a body that can at least do something. You can
put him wherever.
And you can put him anywhere. He's a body that can do something, but he's also going to hit a ton at the plate. Kevin Newman is a guy that has a chance to at least play shortstop. Playing shortstop at the major league level, we know is very, very near impossible. We don't even know if Tim Anderson can do it. We don't know. At this point in his career, we're unsure on that. But it's one of those things where Yolmer Sanchez has a chance right now. Yolmer Sanchez hasn't been in the majors in, 3-4 years. Yolmer Sanchez is an option. Scott Kingery, obviously, there's tons of upside still there, but he's 30 years old at this point, so the upside's kind of dissipated. Look at Joe Adell. I mean, Joe Adell hit 20 home runs last year. Maybe this year he ups that to 30, and it doesn't matter if he's hitting 200 because he hit 30. He's productive. Scott Kingery has a chance at doing 20 home run stuff at second base, but realistically, Christian Moore might be your best option at this point, and that's not a knock on I think Kevin Newman's the wrench here. I think Kevin Newman has actually proven over the last few years.
He's a big league infielder.
Absolutely. And that's where I would say it's a little bit of a tough thing. So realistically, you mentioned it. I think the competition is really with Tim Anderson. And it's whether or not you've got this former All-Star that is at the plummet part of his career. And is he going to continue plummeting to the point of not having any value as a major leaguer and not being a major leaguer and probably retiring out of spring is an option? Or are you going to hand the reins to your first round pick that is going to cost you next to nothing to have him up and show what he can do for you for the next half decade? And at that point, I think you're making the decision of, are we doing this for real or are we not? And you mentioned at third base and how Christian Moore, it's not like Christian is a above average defensive player or that he has an above average arm. He's pretty fringe on both elements of that scale. The big thing that I kept talking about with the Angels is concentration, defensive concentration. It's not that he's lazy. It's not anything close to that. It's just keeping him engaged. And that was the biggest thing about moving him to third base at Instructs was keeping him engaged in the action defensively because this kid wants to hit. And there's nothing wrong with that, but you've got to keep him concentrated in the field. And I think that was the biggest part of him moving to third. Results wise, I don't know. I wasn't at Instructs. A lot of people didn't see him at Instructs at third base and outside of the Angels organization. So you're kind of relying on the Angels for this. And of course, the Angels and any team is going to say, oh yeah, this kid's doing great. We're happy with the results. It's great initial returns. That's a fine political answer for any club. Of course it is. But realistically, knowing the report on Christian, seeing him over the years at Tennessee and seeing him, what's going on here, this kid's a second baseman or a left fielder for me. I know he hasn't played the outfield, but I think you've got to make a decision. That's what this spring is going to be about, is what is your real future, and where is Christian Moore going to fit into that future?
That leads to the next question I want to ask you, which Christian Moore will be the next example of this potentially, which is the Angels have taken an approach. They are the most aggressive team in Major League Baseball as far as promoting prospects. Let's talk a little bit about what that's meant and what that could mean going forward. We'll do that right after this quick break. So as we look at, this is the team that you mentioned. Neto has been 100% a win of, they were aggressive from the moment that they signed him. They pushed him up to the majors, and he is now the best non-Mike Trout name, the best position player on the team, not named Mike Trout. Unfortunately, right now, he's hurt while Trout's healthy, but he's been great. They did the same thing with Nolan Shanuel, and he's, to his credit, held his own. But at the same time, it's hard to fix things that you need to fix at the major league level. It's harder in many ways than it is in the minors. And I would say that here we are going into year 2 plus with Shanuel, where he needs to develop more consistent productive power. Is that the way to say it? Probably could use a little bit improvement defensively too at first base, but the main thing is getting to power more consistently. He's held his own as a hitter. I look at, there's Reed Detmers, there's, we could go down Chase Silsa, we could go down a whole run of pitchers that also have been pushed very quickly. Kind of looking at it big picture, what's the philosophy here? And what, clearly Christian Moore, they're still kind of on this philosophy. What is kind of the thinking behind, hey, we're going to push players to the majors quicker than anybody?
This was where the Angels would get a little political, and Perry in particular, is there was no real legitimate comment to it. For a long time, it was getting Shohei Ohtani to the playoffs. It was showing Shohei Ohtani what the future of the Angels baseball was. Perfectly fine with that. Also, after a while, it was a little bit of necessity. They didn't have the depth to fill. I mean, first base when Nolan came up, expected, unexpected, whatever you want to call it with Nolan, they didn't have anyone to fill those shoes, and it wasn't something where you could just give someone a first base glove and throw them in there. So Nolan kind of had to step in as the top of the depth chart first baseman. This is where it's tricky, is because we have this moment where Shohei Ohtani is no longer with the Angels. We're all aware of that. He has gone on. He's gone up the I-5. He's playing for the Dodgers, won a World Series, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This aggressive approach, some teams that you talk to sit there and say, hey, maybe the Angels are onto something. Maybe they're gaining value early out of kids' careers. Because how many bullets does Ben Joyce realistically have? How many times is he going to throw 105, 106 miles per hour? It's not going to be that common. Are you wasting those bullets? Are you not wasting those bullets? So I don't know if it's capitalizing on value when they're young and developing at the major league level, as opposed to with losing short season and losing other affiliates and seeing where minor league baseball is, if it's an impact on that. But the Angels just will not comment on the actual reasoning on what that is. And I think you have to look back at Shohei originally. And right now, I just don't know what I could tell you, because the minute you step inside the Angels organization, you are on the radar to be called up at the major leagues at any point.
The other thing I would say with that is that the way they use the minors kind of leads to this too, which is I just got to describe it as one of the weirdest approaches that we see. You mentioned we don't have short season ball anymore. We don't have multiple levels of rookie ball. You have the complex, then you have 4 full season levels. While there are 4 full season levels, the Angels kind of approach it almost as if there's 2, right? You're likely to start in the Cal League. It is possible that you may end up in the Northwest League on like a weekend trip, on your way to Rocket City. But generally, with their best prospects, you skip over that and you are in Rocket City. And as we talked about with Caden Dana, that's often the last point, right? Not just for pitchers, for hitters too, where it's like, okay, and once you're done in AA, off you go to the majors. So they're really using 2 full season levels in a lot of ways.
That's true. And that's what Matt and I have been talking about with this article that we're working on together is elementally, Tri-City is consistently one of the 5 worst offensive ballparks across all of minor league baseball when it comes to run production. And it's hard to develop hitters at Tri-City for that reason. The Angels love the affiliate. That's the thing. Tri-City has spent the money. They have upgraded the facilities. I want to say that they are there's at least $3 to $5 million that they have invested in that ballpark from the city, from the organization as well. So they're trying there, but realistically, it's just such a hard place to hit. So sending a kid that has, we talked about this with Nelson Rada 2 years ago. Nelson Rada is a 17-year-old, 18-year-old that's struggling to hit the ball out of the park in the Cal League, which the Cal League is not what it used to be. It doesn't have Adelanto.
No Lancaster, no High Desert.
No Lancaster, no Bakersfield, etc. So it's not what it used to be, but at the same time, this kid is struggling to hit the ball to the warning track in the Cal League. Why in the world would you send him to a place where he might not be able to hit the ball at the infield, physically be able to do it because the elements don't permit him? So was it really a surprise seeing Nelson Rada make the jump to Rocket City last year? For me, it really wasn't, even though he's not this he's not some super prospect. He's not Bryce Harper. He's not Mike Trout. He's not he's advanced, but he's not one of these guys that is so physically advanced as well. So yeah, the Angels really are only utilizing 2 affiliates to some degree, depending on what kind of player you are. If you're a hitter, you're going to the Cal League, then you're going to Rocket City. If you're a pitcher, you might see all 3. I'll admit that the pitchers might see all 3, but the pitchers are not going to go see Salt Lake. You're not going to go see. And for the hitters, I think it indicates how the organization feels about you if you are sent to Tri-City or if you are sent to Salt Lake. Are you really good enough on their radar to make these jumps, make these elite jumps? And it's proven. It's proven what it is. I mean, even a guy like Denzer Guzman, who is a top 10 prospect in this organization and probably would be a top 20 prospect in most organizations across baseball, I believe. He made a trip to Tri-City, even though it was for a month. I think it said a lot about what they believe in when it comes to his hit tool, is that he was not ready to make that jump, even though he's 2 years older than Rada, but still 4 years younger than the rest of the Southern League.
That's the part that again, I know that some of this is because it's already happened, right? Like now we are not in a 2-year affiliate shuffle cycle. We are in, these are your affiliates for 10 years. And by the way, teams had feedback in this, right? This is not something where it was like, oh, you don't have any choice in the matter at all. But it really is odd. And the thing I'd say about it is it's hard to say that this has really been incredibly beneficial. You mentioned before we talk about the guys moving quickly, there are examples where they've been the best player they have and all, but I do kind of also, in some ways, it seems to me like if the player handles the jump to the majors and then is consistently good, yes, you're getting value out of them quicker and all that. But if they kind of just try to hold their own, like Nolan Shanuel, I think, has held his own, he's going to be ARB eligible at a time where most of his contemporaries are like, hey, I've really kind of found myself and I'm established down in the big leagues. And the difference is going to be, he might be then like figuring it out himself at the same time. And it's like, the bad news is that you're going to have this like 2.5, 3 years of one more seasons to get there potentially, where it's like, well, wouldn't it have been better to like have him reach the majors when he's ready to be a 3-WAR player or something like that? Well, again, it is what it is, but it is also fascinating. I don't want to not talk about, we talked about Dana, but there are a couple of other interesting pitchers here near the top of this list. Looking at Aldegari, and looking at, Samuel Aldegari, George Klassen, what was the differentiator there? Because it feels like, again, you got a group there two guys there that are pretty close together.
Again, variance. George Klassen has a chance to be the best pitcher in baseball. The Angels, there are some in the Angels organization that believe he is the most important pitcher in the organization, above Reed Detmers, above Yusei Kikuchi, above all these guys. He's got to prove the point that the strikes are real. That's it. We're talking about 2 years ago where he's walking more guys than he's striking out. He's throwing more balls than he has strikes. I understand that what the Phillies did in the last calendar year and what the Angels continue to do after is remarkably impressive. And a total credit to George Klassen. This is a guy that has potential for 2, maybe 3, maybe 4+ offerings, which is really hard to find between a fastball, cutter, slider, curveball. Even the changeup is a real weapon. So this is a guy that has legitimate weapons across the board. Can he throw those strikes consistently? And if he can, then I will bite the bullet and say I was wrong. This guy should have been the number 1 prospect in the organization. But Sam Aldegari is another guy that has a proven track record of throwing strikes, durability, some durability questions. I was going to say durability. He's shown it lately, but some durability questions. But a guy that throws strikes, has the weapons, and looks the mark of a starting pitcher as opposed to someone that has relief risk. That was a big gap for me on those two guys. Would it surprise me if George Klassen was better by a large margin? No. Would it surprise me if Aldegari was better by a small margin? No. So I took another conservative approach on these two guys. But I believe both of them are going to be impactful major leaguers. I think that we showed that with our grading system. Both have a 50 grade on them, and Aldegari, I think we have him as a 50 grade starter as opposed to a 50 grade reliever. And I think that for George, we have him as a high variance arm, but if he can connect in any way, even if it's in the 9th inning, this is an impact reliever. If it's in the rotation, oh man, that's a special arm. So these are two very important guys to the Angels organization that didn't cost them a whole lot in my general opinion. I love Carlos Estevez. I think he's a clubhouse leader. Right. I think he's one of my favorite guys across baseball. But realistically, I think the Angels got a pretty good deal on this one.
You do that trade every time if you're the Angels.
100%.
You take the chance on the upside of these arms. You mentioned Rada a little bit before, but the 2 others I want to talk on the top 10 are Rada and then Joshua Lugo, who's kind of probably the most interesting kind of a further away guy. Hard to evaluate. It's like Rada is the hardest guy to me of all of these guys to evaluate because you just laid it out. He was at a level that he's not strong enough to be ready for. He got better as the season went along, but I just feel like we don't have a full normal picture of what he is because he was a year to 2 years ahead of schedule playing in Double-A.
Absolutely. I mean, I was talking the day I saw Nelson Rada play for the first time. I got a text message from Kyle Glazer, old Baseball America friend of ours. And he said, "Hey, what's the deal?" I said, "He's getting beat inside and he can't drive the ball out of the infield." And I thought, well, this kid's 17. The guy he's facing is 25. Yeah, he should probably be doing exactly what he's doing. Nelson Rada is really remarkable. And the thing that's kind of intimidating for me is the Angels do not have a true center fielder at the start of this season, a true major league center fielder at the start of the season. I'm a little leery that
boy.
I know I'm shaking my own head, but realistically, the best center field option for the Angels as of today could be Nelson Rada as a 19-year-old. And Nelson Rada, I can't do the math right off the top of my head, but I'm assuming him and Ethan Holiday are around the same age. Not Jackson, but Ethan are around the same age. And I just don't know. But Nelson Rada, incredibly advanced, knows the strike zone as well as anybody you could find out there. Defensively, no questions at all. His arm is going to improve. His arm is already solid to good. Depending on the day, sometimes he gets a little dead arm. It might be a 45 grade arm, but some days it's a 55. He's going to be fine with the arm. He can control the running game, but Instinctually, I don't think I've seen a player like this at that age that knows the game as well as he does. It's just, can he hit the ball out of the infield? And that's going to be the big thing. Is he, a lot of his hard contact is down the opposite line, down the right or left field line, going the other way, because he physically is not able to pull the ball. Something he's going to have to learn to do. Man, I just don't think that. I don't
He
think
doesn't
Max
have the
Scherzer
physicality to do it right now, does he?
I mean, I don't think Jacob deGrom and Max Scherzer are the guys that you should be learning how to pull the ball on, no matter how old those guys are.
Oh. By the way, I am thankful to say that no, he is like, he's a August 2005, and Ethan Holiday is a February 2007. So the
So 8 months.
Ethan Holiday is younger, thankfully, but
By
yeah,
half.
there will be high school players drafted this year who are in that range. Like, yeah, that would be, man. But what about Lugo? Like, is he a candidate? Like you said, there's not a lot of shortstops in the organization right now. Is he like one of the best candidates to be on the opening day roster, or are we going to give him a chance to get a full season ball first?
No, he is probably the opposite of Nelson Rada. He's fine. He's a good hitter. He's a good player. Proved in the Dominican last year that he can at least handle shortstop in pro ball. As he climbs the ladder, as he gets physically more mature, probably going to move to third base, but at least should be able to handle the left side of the infield, which is a big thing that he answered last year in the Dominican. I know it's the Dominican, which you can equate to certain high school levels. You can equate to whatever it is, but I think he's answered a lot of questions. There is an unconfirmed report that he did hit a ball 117 miles per hour off the bat last year. I got that from someone outside the organization. I asked the organization, couldn't get a confirmation on it. So at 17 years old, if you're hitting the ball 117 miles per hour, you are something else. I think this kid has immense power upside. I think that he's going to fit a third base profile. He's just got to prove it. He's such a young guy. Has a chance to see full season ball this year. I don't know if it's going to be right out of the gate. Knowing the Angels, it could be very well. Could be Inland Empire to start the year, but realistically, if he's in Arizona to start the year, it wouldn't surprise, or extended out in Tempe, it wouldn't surprise me. But just a guy that has these immense tools on the dirt that's really exciting, has to figure out a way. His strikeout rates were a little bit alarming. A little alarming for that level. I believe it was over 20-something percent, 22%. He did tire as the season went on. So just getting him to consistently get through a season is going to be the big thing for next year with Josba. But plenty of upside, potential to be an impact bat. But there's a reason why he did grade behind everyone else. But at the same time, we put a kid that played in the Dominican right behind our top 5 prospects that we feel have at least a chance of being everyday or some form of impact players, and above the rest. And I do like some players in this organization. I know organizationally it is one of the bottom tier organizations in talent, at least for the farm system. But I do like some of the players here. I think that there's just too many questions. There's way too many questions. They have good arms, but a lot of them have relief risk. They have good bats, but a lot of them have hit tool risk. So those are two very important things: is strike throwing and hitting, and that's what the Angels have the questions on. So that's why I'm firm believer that yes, this is a bottom tier organization on talent, at least at the moment. But you get one or two of these guys to click, I think they have something special.
So with that, speaking of other guys you like, who's a non-top 10 prospect that you wanted, that kind of is intriguing?
So I had this argument through the winter or through the off season, and every year that we do the handbook, there tends to be a guy that I don't mention that everyone in the organization mentions. And I'll ask them, oh, is that a top 30 guy for you? Oh, maybe. Is that a top 30? But when I have 5 people in the organization mention one player by name through the whole thing, that's got to be the guy, right? It's got to be the guy that everyone's paying attention to. 2 years ago, it was Dario Laverde, who is, I don't believe he's a top 10, he's top 15 prospects in this organization, but the guy that I put right at 30, made the big jump, guys like that. This year, it's Jose Fermin, right-handed reliever, 6'3", 250 pounds. I think he's listed at 248, but 250 pounds. he was a guy that I believe some in the organization said that he was laying bricks, and they found him at a Japanese academy. Or no, they didn't. He was pitching in a Japanese academy, laying bricks, and then suddenly Jonathan Janeo, who is an international scout for the Angels, saw him at a agent's game. The agent had set up a game, and they said, "Hey, why don't you come throw some bullpens for us and sign him for $10,000 as a 21-year-old?" Or I think he was a month shy of his 21st birthday. Went through the organization last year, low A, high A, all the way to double A. Performed and struck guys out all year long. I think his first outing, I want to say his first pro outing, he allowed 5 runs, and after that, it took him 3 months to allow his next 5 runs in relief. Right now, he's a spring training invite, and I think it's legitimate. A lot of people are putting a 70 grade on his slider. That is both internal and external, because you want to hear the external opinions on that as well. So this is a potentially plus slider. He's throwing in the mid to upper 90s, and it's not like he has alarming strike throwing concerns. It's probably below average control, but not something where he's walking a guy per inning kind of issue.
You're talking about your reliever, like, in one inning stints, you're thinking that he'll be on the right side of that balance beam of
exactly. And I mean, I might be talking about a mid reliever. I might be talking about a AAA flameout. I don't know. But when the organization is that high on a guy, and you're hearing it from other people outside the organization as well, you got to pay attention. So Jose Fermin is my guy this year. And there's some people, again, we talk about aggression with the Angels. Some people are saying this is a guy that might be able to crack the opening day roster in the bullpen. We know how bullpens are. We know they're volatile. We know they're different. It's a little different cracking the opening day bullpen as opposed to cracking the opening day lineup. But definitely an interesting guy that I'm going to keep my tabs on.
That's a great name to kind of finish this up with. That was a lot of fun. This is a fascinating, if sometimes also can be a little bit head scratching organization. When you did get me there with the Rada could be the like there's at least a path for him being the opening. That one set me back a little bit, because
I really hope I'm wrong. I really hope I'm wrong on that, but man, it's just something to keep tabs on.
So the funny thing is you laid out that case. Logically, he also could spend the next 2 years in Double A.
Yeah,
because we've established that they do send some hitters to Triple A, but not a lot. And he would be still younger than the average age of the league if he went back there for 2 more years.
You imagine he'd be 21 years old at that point, and he'd be younger than. I mean, he'd be Jay Slaviolette's age by the time. In 2 years at Double A, he'd be Jay Slaviolette's age right now. That's where you have to, when you're comparing amateurs and pros and everything like that, you talk about the top of the class, right? It's like, think about how physically advanced. Oh, I apologize for that. How advanced Jay Slaviolette is with physically. Do a reverse order. Nelson Rada 2 years from now might be that advanced baseball wise, but he still might not be that physically, or even close to that physically.
Yeah. That's a great way to kind of wrap it up. This was a lot of fun. If you enjoyed these, there are 30 of these now. We have 30 prospect system deep dives. So whatever MLB team you are a fan of, as long as they're still active, okay. Sorry, if you're a St. Louis Browns fan or something, if you're if you like the if you're a Boston Braves fan and you hate every time when they move to Milwaukee, you're still around. Well, I'm sorry. We got Braves coverage, but not that. But we have 30 of these at the YouTube channel, on the podcast feed. You can enjoy all of them. But we said we were going to save one of the best for last. This was a fun one. For Taylor, I'm JJ. So long, everybody.